Bringing the focus on wide receivers for the San Francisco 49ers offseason, free agency, trades, who to keep, who to let go from the current roster, of course, draft options as well. How do the 49ers get better at wide receiver on today's Locked On 49ers?
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky. Thanks everybody for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We're talking wide receivers today. Who stays, who goes, and there's kind of a lot of options out there, I think, for the 49ers and wide receiver needy teams around the NFL, free agency, trade market, and a pretty deep class in the NFL draft. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, and every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Croc. I think we have to take a look at the 49ers roster first, as it was constructed in 2025, and who makes the cut into the following season's plans, 2026 and beyond, for the San Francisco 49ers. And I think the first conversation that has to happen is about free agent Jauan Jennings. Jauan Jennings was the 49ers leading receiver. Now, the 49ers leading receiver this year, wide receiver at least, McCaffrey was the leading receiver, but the leading wide receiver wasn't a lot of production at wide receiver for the 49ers this year. And Jauan Jennings led the group, 600 and something yards. He is a free agent. When the 49ers were able to find a way with his little contract dispute in the offseason to bring him back for one more year and then try this thing again in the offseason. So, Croc, I went to Sport Track, and I just wanted to see, because they have kind of a market value thing, what might be market value for a wide receiver like Jauan Jennings. And I was surprised to see that he wasn't number one, but he was number 2 on an annual value projection at $22.6 million per year. And if that's what it takes to keep Jauan Jennings, I think you have to be out, even though I thought the 49ers would be out going into the year. But with the way things went and with the Aiyuk stuff, and now George Kittle with the Achilles, and he will be back to start the year, I started to think, man, maybe with the way Jauan Jennings plays, his physicality, just how important he is to this season in the 49ers, and just how he competes, would be a really nice player to bring back, and maybe the 49ers should rethink it. But for $22 million, Croc, I just don't know if that's the right way to go about it. Where are you at with Jauan Jennings? Should he stay or should he go?
He got to go for $22 million a year. Now, listen, I have an appreciation for Jauan Jennings and what he does and what he is. I think you need that type of guy on your roster. But to pay that amount of money, now I'm also maybe not taking into account inflation, right? So when we hear 22 million, we're thinking, 5 years ago, wow, like that's a lot of money for a receiver. Maybe in 2 years, 22 is just the going rate for a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. I think teams are going to have to think about what he is and maybe how he may fit into what they want to do. Maybe he's more than what he's been on the 49ers. But this season in 15 games, 55 catches on 90 targets is not the most efficient catch to target ratio. 11 yards per carry catch. Now, he did have the touchdowns, 9 touchdowns on the season. So that's terrific. And we know, he's a big body guy, and the 49ers did a lot of good stuff with him down there in the red zone. But just watching him, it didn't feel like, oh, this is a $20+ million receiver a year. You got to remember, now, again, I'm talking about a few years ago, Deebo Samuel, when he signed, it was $20-something million per year. But when you watch Deebo, it's like, oh, yeah, I see why you pay him this. This is a game changer, a dynamic football player, a unique football player, and a split second, like, he changes games. The 49ers were up against it against, like, the Rams, And then just Deebo just goes Super Saiyan and just does some wild stuff, right? You never got that from Jauan Jennings. There's plays that he made. He caught a crosser. I think what was it against Philly and ran off for a touchdown. But I never got to see a sense that, this is a dynamic football player. I thought he was a terrific possession receiver. I thought he blocked his butt off and presented a physicality that the 49ers really want to embody throughout the rest of their roster. I think he was kind of the quote unquote Draymond Green habitual line stepper, where he's going to push the lines with his physicality and impose that on defenders. And again, I appreciate that. It just feels more like 15 a year, 14 a year, as opposed to 22. So, I don't want to count the man's pockets, but if it were me being GM or Jet York and I have to cut the check, I feel a little uncomfortable with that. But especially when you look at some of these games down the stretch, and you needed another receiver. You needed somebody to make a play. And there was just like nothing that you can count on from any of those receivers. So it's
a good point, like with the Deebo comparison. Deebo could create by himself, and Jauan Jennings isn't necessarily that, even though he's a really good player. Love the way he plays, his physicality. He's playing through broken ribs. He will block. I mean, that's awesome. And it's a good player to have on your roster. But I would put, a number, and ideally the way the 49ers roster was built, it was supposed to be Aiyuk, Pearsall, and Jauan was number 3, right? And so if you could pay Jauan Jennings number 3 money, I think you do that all day, especially now with the depth and how things are. But if you have to pay him that kind of money as one of the top free agent wide receivers, and there's teams that are going to give him starter money, I just think you have to have a limit, and it's probably not the smartest move. And then when you start paying guys, I would much rather pay $22 million a year for Tyler Linderbaum, right? The best center potentially in the one of the better centers in the NFL, 25 years old, hitting free agency, that could really help a lot on the 49ers offense. Like there's a number of places I think you could go if you're looking to spend $20 million, and you could find some similar production, even if it's not as physical and it's not the guy that you developed. And I think there's a lot of fond memories, and I don't want to say memories yet, he's not gone, but some fond thoughts. And I think people think highly of Jauan Jennings, as do I. But what he's not is a guy that you're just like, well, he's 1 or 2 and we're done there at wide receiver. And if you have to pay him at that rate, then I think it's not the right move.
All right. I also, it's tough for me to fathom 49ers really paying any receiver. And I'm glad that it came up on my timeline. So someone tagged me in it about Aiyuk and paying him a lot of money. And he brought up, because essentially it started, somebody on Twitter commented and was like, oh, the 49ers, like, Kyle doesn't really use a wide receiver 1 in the traditional sense of today's day and age, right? The modern wide receiver 1, how many times they're targeting him? And I think it was my guy, Rich Madrid. He kind of just put LOL. And so I'm not sure exactly what his thoughts were, but I saw everybody else like, some people should keep their comments to themselves, blah, blah, the guy's stupid. But there was one response where someone said, well, I kind of agree, but I do remember Eric Crocker doing the Brandon Aiyuk negotiation say, why would you pay a guy top of the market wide receiver money when the 49ers don't utilize their wide receivers that way? And I also saw some comments where like some people were like, people must forget Brandon Aiyuk was a 1,300-yard receiver. Like, of course he's a wide receiver 1. Well, you start doing the math. He was 36th in targets that year. Mm-hmm. That year he had 1,350 yards or whatever, 36th in targets. So, and the year before that, he had this essentially the same amount of targets, but a few hundred yards less. He just in the 1,300-yard season was top of the league in yards per reception. Is that going to be consistent? Now, if you go out there and you get another guy, of course he has big time ability. And in this situation, in scenario, they were talking about Justin Jefferson, right? Justin Jefferson, go get him. What Kyle said, okay, I'm going to scrap what I like to do offensively and what my philosophy is, and I'm going to go full Julio Jones and target this guy 20 times a game. I don't know if Kyle's going to do that. No. So in theory, you love to have the Justin Jefferson because we talked about Jauan, maybe not a guy who can create his own. Deebo, he could in different ways. Justin Jefferson definitely can affect all levels. But is Kyle going to target him in that manner that justifies paying him almost $40 million a year? I'd have a hard time thinking Kyle changes a lot of his offensive philosophies for that one player.
And Justin Jefferson's not going to be available. So I think 49ers fans can stop that pipe dream and keep
the other Viking receiver.
Yes. There are some rumors that Jordan Addison, though, the other starting wide receiver in Minnesota, could be available via trade this offseason. Some other potential options for the 49ers in free agency via trade and some other players they currently have. We'll try to answer the question if they should be back or if the 49ers should try to upgrade or look elsewhere at the wide receiver position, which clearly needs some work in this offseason. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local tax expert and in person, or you can connect online. They handle everything: W-2s, self-employed forms, and it's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it locally for TurboTax. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. That's TurboTax.com/local. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen of the day. If you've not checked out the Everydayer Club, please do so. You can find the link in the description or go to lockedon49ers.supercast.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/everydayer. And as an everydayer and part of the Everydayer Club, you get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On 49ers, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every other major podcast app, and an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. We'll be talking a lot of off-season stuff. You can talk draft, talk with other trash talk as well, other fan bases if you like. So again, check the link in the show notes or go to lockedon49ers.supercast.com to check out the Everydayer Club. So, Croc, let me go through the roster currently as constructed for the San Francisco 49ers at wide receiver. We talked Jauan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, the de facto starters as of the season ending. You have DeMarcus Robinson, who's still under contract for one more year as a free agent last offseason. Kendrick Bourne, Sky Moore, both free agents. Jordan Watkins, rookie fourth rounder, hardly saw him on the field. Malik Turner, Colton Dowell, Junior Bergen. You had Jacob County, who was on IR most of the year, fourth rounder from the year before. Hardly have seen him. Obviously, Brandon Aiyuk is going to be gone. Whether that's trade or probably cut, maybe there's a move to be made out there with him. And I'd forgotten, looking at the roster, that Trent Taylor actually started the year on the 49ers before he ended up on IR as well. Who of those players, Croc, should be part of the 49ers plan going into 2026? DeMarcus Robinson, you don't cut him, right? But you keep the veteran presence around, knowing that he's someone that could start some games for you. He's got one more year left. It's not super expensive. I think that's an easy. You need a veteran.
Like Chris Conley, like that situation. Right. Chris Conley hung around for a couple of years. It was a veteran that you could play. You're not asking to be this wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, but it was cool in a big game, playoff game, to see DeMarcus Robinson step up in that role and be very productive. So again, you're probably not going to get that every single game, but just to know that he has that in his back pocket, if need be, maybe not 100 and something yards, but okay, give you 60. That'd be really good for the 49ers. So you keep him as kind of that 5th or 6th receiver, ideally on the roster, who potentially could be a 3 for you. I'm looking for some of these younger guys to really step up, right? Like the Watkins and some of these guys that have a little bit more speed, a little bit more dynamic ability, and trying to figure out how the 49ers develop those guys to be able to utilize them consistently in the offense. And Kyle talked about the injuries being setbacks for a guy like Watkins. And hey, he comes in, rookies are behind, but you hope that over the course of the first quarter of the season, they can get adjusted to the NFL and start to do well from there. But when you're injured, it's hard to do that. So what type of offseason will Watkins have? Is next year going to kind of count as a rookie year, or are they going to say, nope, I understand what's asked of me. I've been in these meetings, even though I haven't been able to be on the field. And can he show up in OTAs and start to kind of make a stamp for somebody who can really push to have some type of role in the 49ers offense? I think that would be a really almost best case scenario for the 49ers.
Yeah, years 2 and 3 for Watkins and Cowing, and they're, similar kind of height, weight, speed guys, fourth rounders. And we don't know a lot about them. I haven't seen a lot with those guys. I almost feel like it's a death match between those two guys for one roster spot in the upcoming season, and the other guy's not going to make it. And who knows, maybe both of them end up the way Danny Gray did, where they're just not part of the plan. And you don't see it very often with the 49ers where a young receiver can't find his way on the field for the beginning of his career and then finally ends up doing something. Like Aiyuk, even second year was the doghouse, but rookie year, he was involved, right? And so I don't know if you can think of one, but I can't think of one. So now it's up to them to really prove that they belong and fight for something. But you would think that style of player with the speed should be somebody that the 49ers can find a lot of uses for going into the 2026 season. And clearly they'll be on the roster and able to compete. I think you got to bring back Sky Moore, who's a free agent. He only played 9.8% of the snaps last year for the 49ers, but just as a return man and maybe somebody that can get ingrained in the offense a little bit and give you a little bit of run after catch, which the 49ers did not have enough of. I think he's a slam dunk that you got to bring back, Croc. I don't know if you agree there. And I would lean toward not at all bringing back Kendrick Bourne. What are your thoughts on Kendrick Bourne?
Why are you hating on my guy Kendrick Bourne, man?
Like, how many guys that run a 4.7 can you have on the field? And he's blocking the ability for Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowings and whoever the 49ers draft this year, if they draft a wide receiver, to get on the field. I don't want Kendrick Bourne to be blocking those guys. And we saw he doesn't have any dynamic ability that should be blocking other players, in my opinion. And I don't want Kyle to have his crutch around that he's going to force onto the football field just because he's a veteran that he trusts more. I want to force Kyle Shanahan to put Jordan Watkins on the field.
Justice for Kendrick Bourne. We're going to have to bring that hashtag back. This is a guy that had nearly 300 yards over the span of 2 games for the 49ers at a pivotal time for the 49ers during the season. It contributed to a huge win against the Rams on the road. So I'm not ready to just throw away Kendrick Bourne. That could be my own bias. I like the veteran ability. I think he, at the very least, should be somebody that goes into camp with the Niners. Now, again, you can have your ideal guys, but what if the younger guys don't come along? At least Kendrick Bourne, I want to say he really knows the offense, but I saw him line up wrong a couple of times in a playoff game. Little tweaks, subtle tweaks. I think he'll get that together, but I think he's someone, again, more of an emergency guy. I can see him potentially even, and I hate to put this on Kendrick Bourne, he's been an active roster guy since midway through his rookie year, but dare I say practice squad?
Yeah, if he doesn't get snapped up in free agency, maybe he's the guy that hangs out until after the draft or into the summer, and then you realize, okay, you need another guy, let's bring him in, or you end up bringing him into the practice squad. Like, I'm okay there, but I don't want both Jauan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne on the roster. The 49ers need to add speed.
They do. They need to add good speed.
Right. Yeah.
And I think a guy, again, are we ready to talk about Jordan Addison or not yet?
We are ready because essentially the 49ers have 4 players. It's Pearsall, it is DeMarcus Robinson, and it's the 2 fourth rounders from the last 2 drafts in Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing. As far as, kind of those are the main 4 guys that are going to be returning this year before free agency, before the draft, before any trades happen. But next, Croc, we got to talk trades. I think there's a ton of options potentially in trade. And I think if I had to kind of looking at it more now to start the offseason, I think it's maybe most likely that the 49ers do make at least one pretty significant trade for a wide receiver. So we'll drop those names on you next, including rumors swirling around not that Vikings wide receiver, but the other guy, Jordan Addison, that could potentially be available. And maybe the 49ers have already made a call there. We'll get into all that next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Game Time. NFL season is nearly over, and there's nothing like being at the game. You want to go Championship Sunday, crowd noise, energy, cheering alongside other fans. Probably not a lot of 49ers fans want to go watch the Seahawks and the Rams live, but Major League Baseball is going to be getting going. Got NBA and, of course, concert tickets, comedy shows. You can find it all at Game Time. But the frustrating part, has always been getting the tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. Incredibly intuitive app, browsing, comparing, buying tickets takes just minutes. You love the view from your seat before you buy, so there's no surprises, and you can get some phenomenal last-minute deals on sporting events and concerts that I've used multiple times. So if you're a sports fan, and I know you are, because you're listening to this podcast, you got to have Game Time downloaded and ready to go. And you can get $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. And when I say the bets you like most, the boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching, live in-game betting, every sport imaginable, you can find it at FanDuel. So you make your picks, then apply your profit boosts in the playoffs and get an even bigger payout while the playoffs are rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. All right, Croc. I don't know if you're laughing at the 49ers roster at wide receiver right now, or if you're laughing at fans that think that Justin Jefferson could potentially be available. But Grant Cohn, 49ers beat writer, I know he's he is a interesting individual, and some of our fans, especially every time we bring up Grant, you get funny responses if we're on a live chat. But he's breaking into the insider breaking news business, because he says he's got sources that say the San Francisco 49ers called about Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings, and that Addison might be somebody who is available, and potentially the Bills and the 49ers could be hot on the trail of a wide receiver in the trade market. Now,
real quick, can we touch on Grant Cohn? Because when you start to say that, there may be some people that roll their eyes at that. Grant Cohn. But Grant Cohn has been on the beat for a long time now. He talked about being there with Colin Kaepernick. So we're talking about like probably over a decade where Grant has been on the beat. You think there's no people inside the building that tell him little things or tip him off on certain things?
Or
and
people
for as many people that talk crazy about Grant Cohn, everywhere I go, I hear people who say, "Oh, you're 49er podcast. Yeah, I listen to this guy, Grant Cohn." Everybody listens to Grant Cohn. So there's some people that can't stand him. There are a lot of people that listen to him. But I will say about this with him breaking news or, doing that. He's been there for a long time. He knows some people. So, okay, I just wanted to kind of add, there is some credibility to him dropping something like that.
And why would the Minnesota Vikings be willing to trade Jordan Addison is the question. And it's because he's been arrested 3 times, and they don't want to pick up his 5th-year option. He was a first-round pick a few years ago, and they have to make a decision on picking up his 5th-year option. Apparently, they don't want to do that. And they like Jalen Naylor, who they have, who's also going to be a free agent. So, and obviously they're paying Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson not available. So Jordan Addison, what do you think? Jordan Addison clearly brings a lot of juice, something the 49ers need. What would you give up for someone like Jordan Addison in trade? Because I feel like I might be a little bit lower on a trade offer just because of the arrests. There's a reason why he's available. And potentially you have to be okay with trading for a guy and bringing the character in that if he gets arrested again the day after you trade for him, you might have to just cut him. And so you have to give up the right amount that doesn't hurt if he's a knucklehead and gets arrested between, January and the first pre-draft minicamp.
Arrested 3 times. That's pretty wild.
In 3
And that's
years,
very concerning.
or 2 years. He was the first rounder in 2023 draft, right? He's already been arrested 3 times. Now they were, so here, let me just, I don't know if it changes it for you, but here's the Jordan Addison arrests. 3 arrests since 2023. He was going 140 miles an hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. I think got reckless driving on that one. He had a DUI, fell asleep in the middle of an intersection, apparently. And then the third one, which the charges were dropped, was a trespassing charge, I believe, where it was at the Hard Rock Hotel in Florida, and they asked him to leave and he wouldn't leave or something like that. But those charges got dropped at the trespassing at the casino. And so apparently that's when the 49ers called after those charges were dropped. That happened a year ago. So he hasn't gotten arrested since last January, Croc. But again, like talent-wise, he should have a lot of value. But when you factor in that, which is why he's available, A, do you want to bring a player who's been arrested 3 times since 2023 into the building? And B, you have to be okay with what you give up to bring that guy in.
There's definitely some maturity issues going on there. My thing would be this: if he's dealt by the Vikings, they trade him away. Is he expecting a new contract or somebody to pick up his 5th year option? And if that's the case, I'm out. But if it's like, you know what, I just need
your option's not that big of a deal for me because it's less than what we're talking about. Jauan Jennings getting $22 million per year. The 5th year option, he's not even that much. And then you would get a couple of years to see him before you have to figure out what the next contract move would be. And to be honest with you, you would almost hope that you wanted to sign him after that. But again, that's going to factor into it because you wouldn't get, you're not getting the full 4 years of a rookie contract.
Well, if you're the 49ers, I think you recoup some money from the whole Brandon Aiyuk fiasco, and maybe you say, all right, well, we're paying a fraction of a guy that clearly is talented, clearly has some ability, clearly can win over the top, which the 49ers want. Like a lot of things that we're asking the 49ers to get better at with the receiver group, he is that, and that's proven he can be that at the NFL level. But again, there's some maturity stuff there. So maybe kind of a change of scenery is a wake-up call. There's some guys that, people forget about this. Chris Carter did one time play for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
And he had some substance abuse issues. And he went to Minnesota, and, nobody ever talks about his time in Philly. So I'm not saying that Jordan Addison will be Chris Carter, and he definitely has some things going on. But I guess it wouldn't hurt if you're telling me, okay, we trade, maybe a 4th and a 5th round swap, or something like that, like just something like really low, to where it's like, well, I wouldn't mind spending a 4th round pick or a 5th round pick on someone who I know what he's capable of. We just need him to be more mature.
Yeah.
But we have 2 years to look at it. I guess that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, I think we're in the same spot there. 49ers do have a couple of 4th round comp picks, I believe, coming their way too. So you're talking about a 4th round comp pick for Jordan Addison. I think that would start to make a lot more sense. But if it costs a 2nd round pick, I think you might have to be out on that and just maybe go into the draft. How about a couple of other trade? Here's another guy. How about this? Especially if the 49ers lose Jauan Jennings, what about a guy who's shaped similarly, ran a little faster coming out of the draft, was drafted just a few picks after Ricky Pearsall, and whose GM and owner of the Buffalo Bills just kind of crushed him in a press conference recently. So value at an all-time low. He was a healthy scratch in some games this year, but has some ability. What about Keon Coleman of the Buffalo Bills? This is something that would take a day 3 pick. You might even be talking about a conditional 6th round pick or something like that. And I think he was in the wrong role in Buffalo as an outside wide receiver. I would love to see Keon Coleman potentially in that big slot role if Jauan Jennings was to move on in free agency.
I could see him excelling in that role if he can get the offense mentally. There's a lot of ability, but not if you're expecting him to consistently win on the outside. I thought he essentially kind of struggled with that in college. Wasn't like a huge separation guy, but he just made some spectacular catches. You put him in a slot where he has more favorable matchups, more spacing. I think that's an area where he could do well. And if I'm the 49ers, I'm throwing all the resources at some of these guys I can. So if you say, hey, I can get Jordan Addison for a 4th round comp pick, and then I can turn around and get Keon Coleman, aka Jauan Jr., for a 7th, I'm taking it.
Right. Yeah. How about this? I'm gonna drop 2 more names on you because I heard the press conference of John Eric Sullivan, the new GM of the Miami Dolphins, And it sounded a lot to me like the team that was tanking for Tua is now going to be on the march for Arch, and it's a complete rebuild that's about to happen. And they're going to rip the Band-Aid off of Tua, and they're going to have a whole bunch of dead cap, and they're going to try to get this thing right and start drafting and developing in the Green Bay Packers mold in Miami, which would mean Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle potentially available on the trade market. What are your thoughts there, Croc? Do you like those options better, potentially?
Yes. I mean, those are dynamic guys and big playability. And the 49ers just, desperately missed that in the offense this year. I guess if you just kind of gave me an option out of everything, I would probably go a combination of Jordan Addison and Keon Coleman, because I think you give up less.
Yes.
You still leave room for a guy like Ricky Pearsall to be whatever you need or want him to be in your role, or whatever role in your offense. So I would go more that route. You don't give up as much, and you're not really paying those guys much. Whereas, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they're still kind of expensive football players.
Yeah. Here's another name that I think we've got to bring up when you look at the free agent market, Brock. Well, one name is George Pickens, and he's the number one free agent target at money. That's a $30+ million a year contract. He's a little bit weird. I think George Pickens, stylistically, probably not a Shanahan receiver as much either. So probably a big no on George Pickens, I assume, Croc.
I really like George Pickens.
Mm-hmm.
And just watching him consistently win, kind of unorthodox as a route runner, but he's a big time just playmaker in general. But I'm not sure he's a fit for the 49ers offense. He's kind of a guy you should kind of get put out there and be like, all right, hey, win these routes. Like, just win on this rep. And that's the 49ers like, no, I need you to be here at this time, at this spot. And if you're not, like, you're just not going to play. I'm going to put you in the doghouse. And then I don't want to see a guy like Pickens in the doghouse, because I don't know if he'll ever recover from that.
Right. And when you just went through this with Brandon Aiyuk, you're going to, potentially, but there was rumors that the Niners asked for Pickens in those trade talks with the Steelers for Brandon Aiyuk too. So maybe they really like George Pickens, who's a super talented guy. What about a reunion with Deebo Samuel, who's a free agent, Croc? They need that yak back, man. They lack the yak right now.
They need that yak back. And he still showed signs of being Deebo. I mean, you bring him back at a reasonable price.
So it's crazy because
you feel more comfortable with
Deebo projected to make less than Jauan Jennings. I would sign Deebo before I would sign Jennings.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
Deebo still did some good things with Washington. Now, again, the money, and we talked about this with Brock Purdy. Once you start making big-time money, people are going to view you differently. Deebo signed a big contract. They're going to view you differently. You had 700 yards? You had 800 yards? Well, that's not $23 million a year type of production. We don't like it. Now, if you're telling me you're paying him $15, $14, $13 million a year, and he gives you 700 yards, 750 yards, I'll take it. And an occasional screen for 60, I'll take it.
And if the 49ers are able to do something in the trade market or free agent market, that would free them up in the draft to not feel like they have to force a wide receiver early. But I can see the draft being a really good option for the 49ers. Get younger, get faster. They need to get younger on offense. There's some guys that can run after the catch. I think late in the first round is a good, need meeting value potentially at wide receiver at that portion of the draft with the way this class is shaping up. But a couple more free agent names I want to throw at you. And the two most popular I've seen is Colts wide receiver Alec Pierce. That money might cost similarly what we were talking about with Jauan Jennings. And then Romeo Doubs of the Green Bay Packers, Croc, potentially being a player that can roll in and be a starter. And I think just because he hasn't, just because of the way they split snaps in Green Bay, I think potentially could bring a lot more to his next team if he was just a consistent, number two guy potentially. And then the third name I want to bring up, and this would hurt your division rival, is Rashid Shaheed, who's a free agent.
Dynamic football player. I may take him over everybody that we just mentioned.
Wow. And hurt the Seahawks at the same time. And then you don't have to spend that money on Sky Moore because Rashid can be your returner. He can give you he can be your number 3 wide receiver. You can be your gadget guy. He can be your yak guy, your speed guy.
Everything.
He hits a lot.
Special teams, all that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be against Rashid Shaheed. I'm with you, man. I think of the free agent names, he might be my favorite as well. But I think the trade market and then still draft the guy might be the way to go too. But there's a lot of names and there's a lot of possibilities. I think it's going to be a really interesting offseason for the 49ers, specifically at the wide receiver position, because you got to do something. And for me, I think the gaping hole is that number one wide receiver. So in the end, I think that's, if you can, you've got to try to get that, whether that's Hill or Waddle, whether you think that's Addison or whether it's your first round pick. I think they need to draft someone who's better than Jennings, better than Ricky Pearsall potentially, and not just bringing in some dudes that run 4.7 that are okay. Right. I think you gotta swing on this, I think, at wide receiver potentially, because that's what's missing.
Yeah. Need to get more dynamic.
Yep. Dynamism.
Not just at the receiver. I know we're talking about receivers right now. Running back position too. You missed that. You remember 49 went from Matt Breida to Raheem Mostert, and those were home run hitters.
Hold on.
Really good Christian McCaffrey, a great Christian McCaffrey and what he was and how productive, but still lost. You haven't seen those explosive plays that the 49ers had. So again, keep CMC, do your thing. Where's the guy that averages 5.5 yards a carry? Well, they had that before, haven't had that. How
about you call John Eric Sullivan and you ask about Hill and Waddle, and you say, what about that Achane fella? What about Achane comes in? McCaffrey continues to be more wide receiver than running back. Now you got better at wide receiver and you got better at running back and more dynamic overall. Croc.
GM Peacock. I like it.
Let's go. Fire up the trade machine. It's going to be an off season. We're going to go deeper into the 49ers roster, talk a number of positions. I think we wanted to start with wide receivers. I think we're going to keep checking in with wide receiver. We're going to have draft prospects and doing shows. And we're with you every day as we were in the season. In the off season is what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So thanks for tuning in. Check out the Everydayer Club, and Croc and I back tomorrow. And by the way, it's off season time. We can do some more mailbags. We don't have crossovers. We don't have games to break down. So hit us up with your questions, your topics, whether it's on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky, or in the YouTube comments. And Croc and I will be back tomorrow. No, we'll be back post
Monday, Sunday,
real quick.
Monday.
Seahawks or Rams?
I'm rooting for Sam Darnold. I'm not rooting for the Seahawks. I'm rooting for Sam Darnold.
And I think right now they've had some really good matchups and been very even against each other. But I just think the Seahawks are playing better. And then the Broncos don't have a quarterback. So I think it's going to be Pats Seahawks Super Bowl. Find out, and we'll be back Monday to see if we are right here. Locked On 49ers.